What's up, everyone? It's the Hub City Hoops Talk podcast. We got Jacob Harris. How's it going, Jacob?
Oh yeah, it's live. If you ignore the first half from last night, it's really, really good. But it was a interesting game last night to say the very least.
Interesting game. We're excited to go over the BYU recap with y'all today. Man, it really was a tale of two halves, right? Tech was down 48-32 at the end of the first half. Nothing looked good. Even in the start of the second half, it didn't look super good because I think Tech gave up like three offensive rebounds in a row or something. And I had even put
Yeah,
out
on
a
like the
tweet.
first possession.
Yeah, I had put out a tweet and I was like, there's just no effort on the offensive glass because there just really wasn't a lot of effort, and kind of
Hmm.
that first half just felt very uninspired. And then Tech proceeded to go on a pretty historic run in that second half. I need to actually go in and pull the stats on this, but I don't know the last time Tech has scored 53 points in a second half of a Big 12 basketball game. That's pretty unprecedented for a Texas Tech team. It's pretty unprecedented in general when you're playing a top 20, ish opponent.
Yeah.
And BYU is kind of like analytically, all of the sites love BYU. There is not one site that doesn't love BYU. I think Haslam has BYU as, heading into the game yesterday, they were top five on Haslam. They were top eight
Hmm.
on Bart Torvik. They were top five on Ken Palm, I think, or sorry, top eight on Ken Palm,
Yeah, it's up it. And then
top
I think they
five in the
were,
net.
yeah, in the net rankings.
So they analytically, the computers love this BYU team. And as a Texas Tech, fan, and someone who's watching it and trying to understand the resume better, that's a good thing for Tech's resume. So it's definitely going to be a Q1 win. It already's gone in the net as a Q1 win.
Hmm.
But yeah, Jacob, let's just start in the first half. I think that I noticed some things that were going wrong, but talk to me about kind of what went wrong in the first half, against BYU.
I feel like defensively, you weren't pressuring the ball as much as you should have. I feel like you were almost afraid that you were going to give up a bunch of drives to the rim, which I don't really understand why that was a fear because you allowed that a lot in the second half and it did not work out for them. And then offensively, I feel like a lot in the first half, you tried to match them shot for shot. Like they would hit a couple threes, and you feel like you'd have to go down and hit a three, and thus you wouldn't get a paint touch, you wouldn't drive. Just a bunch of it was just really ugly to watch.
Yeah, it really was. And you just I'm pulling up the first half box score here. And
Hmm.
nothing stands out too significantly. Obviously, BYU hit 10 3-pointers in the first half. And it's typically kind of like a law of averages thing. Whenever a team, goes that crazy in the first half shooting, it's like I'm just pulling this out of a hat, but it's like a 99% chance that they're going to correct themselves in the second half, and
Yeah.
that's what you saw obviously with the shooting. But 10 of 20 from the 3-point line, and I think that normally I could live with that. Like against Kansas State, I could live with it because I was like, well, a lot of those shots were contested. They were like off the dribble. They weren't super easy
Hmm.
3-point shots. Last night against BYU. I mean, these guys they didn't have a defender within 5 feet of them, and it's
No.
like, and I credit a lot of that to BYU's offensive scheme, and they really found some exploits in the defense. Particularly, they just moved the ball really well. They
Yeah, they did.
they really seemed to kind of swing the ball along the perimeter really well, and they also did some great stuff off the pick and roll with the Khalifa kid. I mean, that guy, he tore Tech up last night, and I don't think he's a
He
really known
did.
as a scorer.
No, and I covered him and spoke to him a few different times when he was in the portal, and got to watch a lot of this film from his last stop. And I knew he was capable of that. I didn't think it was going to happen against Texas Tech. I thought Washington would do a bit better job of locking him down, but at the same time, Warren Washington hasn't faced a center that can do as much as he can, and it's just perimeter wise, the guy's like a point center. Like
Yeah.
he's a really good passer, really good shooter, pretty solid rebounder, and I feel like he really kind of maybe not exploited a weakness, but but really gave the Tech big men a look they haven't seen all season and probably won't see again all season. Because
Yeah.
Dickinson can shoot from Kansas, but he's not the type of passer or the type of mover that Khalifa was last night.
Exactly. I mean, Khalifa was 2 of 4 from three in the first half. And
Mm-hmm.
that's your big, stretching out the court there. And that he, who Khalifa kind of reminded me of a little bit was a little bit of Fardal's AMAC, but just much more disciplined offensively. Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? He really, he didn't really take any bad shots, and he seemed to have pretty good touch around the rim. I was
Mm-hmm.
really impressed with him. I thought Warren Washington did a really good job in the second half, but even
Oh yeah.
even in the second half, I mean, he torched Texas Tech. If it wasn't for
Mm-hmm.
Khalifa, I mean, BYU may lose, by 10 in this game.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
it was an interesting first half from a analytics standpoint. Nothing really jumps off the paper a ton. I think that some things that I notice here: 11 second chance points for BYU in the first half. That really kind of hurt Texas Tech. They also had 13 bench points, but that doesn't stand out too much for me because BYU is just a deep team. You wouldn't
Yeah.
expect that Texas Tech's bench isn't going to really, give you 30, 40 points off the bench in a night. But
Mm-hmm.
BYU's team is just so deep. They really, I'd have to go back and look, but I think they play like 10 guys or something. It's pretty
Yeah,
nuts.
it's they
Um,
yeah, all extended minutes too. They're really deep. And so somebody I guess on Twitter this morning asked me why for our main account we mentioned that Tech had jumped in Ken Palm rankings and BYU still ninth in the Ken Palm rankings.
yes.
And then somebody asked why. And I was kind of like, dude, like they're a really good team.
Yeah.
Like
Yes, they are.
I don't think people have fully grasped it yet. Like it's that last night's win was a really, really, really good win. And when it comes down to March and seeding, um, it's gonna look really good.
It is. And, we didn't get to do a BYU preview, unfortunately, but they do everything well. Then that's why they're ranked so high analytically. They
Mm-hmm.
have a
Yeah.
they have a top 15 offense and a top 20 defense. So that's what happens. And they do everything well. The only thing that they don't do well is get to the free throw line offensively. And
Yeah.
they're actually like almost dead last in the country at that. And you kind of saw that last night. They didn't really get to the free throw line a ton.
No, they don't drive to the rim a bunch.
No, they don't. But they are. I mean, go. Any fans listening to this that are maybe curious about how these rankings and analytics work, go to Bart Torvik's website, take a look
Mm-hmm.
at BYU's team profile. They're 14th in adjusted offense, eighth in effective field goal percentage. They don't turn the ball over a lot. They offensive rebound like hell. They're one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country. They have one of the highest 2-point percentage, plays in college basketball. They're 10th actually in 2-point percentage.
Yeah.
So they're very good. And defensively,
Yeah.
I wasn't very impressed with them defensively last night.
No.
I think in the first half, obviously it's easy to say that about a team that just gave up 53 points in a half, but this is a good transition for us actually, because I want to move into the second half here.
Mm-hmm.
But let's be honest. I mean, how do you stop a guy in Pop Isaacs who literally just can't miss? Pop was 8 of 11 from the field in the second half. Says
Yeah.
five. I thought he was 6 of 9 from three in the second half, but on stat broadcast it has him as 5 of 7 from three in the second half. Four
Mm-hmm.
rebounds, 4 assists. And he only had 2 turnovers in the second half, and you would like to maybe see that closer to one, but man, the things he was doing defensively too, he was kind of being a kind of a pest on the defensive side. He's one
Yeah.
thing he's really gotten better with is his vision on defense, and then just kind of almost just like preemptively, jumping in front of balls and getting steals, and it seems like his IQ defensively has really skyrocketed. But talk to me about the second half. What are your thoughts? I mean, I believe, Tech outscored BYU 53-30 in the second half. What went right for Texas Tech, I guess, in the second half? Were there any adjustments that you noticed?
Oh yeah, big time. I feel like this is something that we've seen with Coach McCaslin And it's something that I'm really, really happy because last year we did not see this. Halftime adjustments are elite. The first thing I noticed, even within the first possession, even though they gave up 3 offensive rebounds, was the ball pressure on screens was just entirely different. I feel like in the first half, kind of like I said, I guess they were afraid of these guys kind of driving to the rim a little bit. And in the second half, they weren't. And especially guys like you said, Pop really played good defense. I think Joe Toussaint played really, really good defense in the second half as well. Just kind of forcing guys to drive. And then once they drove, they kind of realized like, oh, these guys aren't super athletic, kind of like Houston has really athletic guards that will get by you and get to the rim. These guys aren't that. They're really, really good shooters, obviously. They're really, really good in the mid-range, and they have 2 posts that they, Khalifa and Traore that they flip in and out. That both are really, really good post players, but they don't really have any guys that will just get to the rim and get buckets. And I feel like that was the first big adjustment. The second big adjustment was that instead of trying to match them shot for shot, I feel like we try to get some more paint touches, drive to the rim a bit more, because that's kind of one of their weaknesses on defense. I thought was that they really let a lot of people get to the rim. And I feel like in the second half, the more you tried to drive to the rim, the more you were able to kick out threes and get some free throws. And I feel like that's ultimately what led you back in the game.
Yep, I totally agree. And I did want to talk about Joe Tucson a little bit. And I agree.
Mhm.
I thought defensively his effort was phenomenal. I mean, he's one of those guys that's gonna he leaves it all on the floor every night,
Yeah,
and he has really struggled offensively as of
he
late.
has.
And I think he's just getting in his head a little bit. I feel like he's there were a couple of shots last night that really frustrated me from him where he would run into the paint kind of
Hmm.
out of control, throw the ball up, and then just kind of like expecting a foul, kind of flopping almost. And it's you're just not going to get that in Big 12 play. I think
No.
we've seen a pretty consistent style of calling from the refs for the most part. You
Yes.
still see a lot of wonky calls, and you're like, what the hell? That makes no sense. But in reality, you're not going to get a ton of those NBA style kind of touch fouls in the paint.
No.
So I'd like to see Joe kind of maybe anticipate fouls less and just be more physical. Like he is a ball of muscle, you know what I mean? Like
Yes,
jump
he
in
is.
there, use your athleticism, get
Mm,
to the rim, and actually draw the contact. Don't kind of force it, I guess to say. So anyways, wanted to talk about him a little bit. I think he has to get going for Tech offensively. He really
yeah.
struggled against Houston. He really struggled against BYU. But the good news is Pop Isaacs, man, his maturity is just it's something special. It's
Hmm.
like when I watch him and I think about his progression as a player, and you and I covered Pop in high school. I got to watch him several times in
Yeah.
person. This is a guy who was never known for defense. This is a guy
No.
who really never was known for a patient, style of ball with the ball in his hands. He was always known as a guy who's going to shoot 10 to 15 threes a game in high school, right? And then you go
Hmm.
to last year, he really struggled with ball security. He wasn't really someone that you could lean on to kind of get you a bucket in crunch time, in regards to like getting into the paint and maybe finding an open man cutting, or even just using his body to kind of find a layup or maybe like a little mid-range shot. I mean, he last night, I'll pull up the stats here shortly, but last night, he scored a significant amount of points in crunch time for Tech. I mean,
Yeah, he did.
I'll have to pull it up, but I think he scored like, 8 to 10 points in the final 5 minutes or something like that. And he was just clutch. Obviously, the 3-point shot was hitting for him, which honest, that was really the pivotal thing for Tech. I think if they wanted to get back in this game, they needed some 3-point shots, especially when you have a deficit of 16. So that was huge for him. But man, the one play that stood out for me with Pop was in that final couple minutes. He drove it to the bucket. It was right after he hit one of those big threes, and he's driving it into the
Hmm.
paint. And then he just it does this little hook pass around the defender,
Oh
drops it
yeah.
to Warren Washington, and Washington just slams it. And I'm just like, who is this guy?
I
you
think
know?
I think that was the moment I was like, all right, game over.
Yeah.
Like it was I think we're up by 4 or 6 or something like that. And it was they just hit a three, I think, or maybe something like that. And I was like, man, this might get tight. And then all of a sudden he does that, and I'm like, nope, that's it. If he's gonna make plays like that after scoring 30 points, like it's over.
It's
You
it
can't
you
you can't
can't.
you can't guard him.
And then he's really just like he's developed so much. I mean, he's
Hmm.
when he gets into the paint now, he's really using his leverage of his defender and he's really keeping his he's doing so much that you see almost NBA, guards do. And
Yeah.
he's almost developing skills of a point guard. I still think that he has a lot of work to do, but
Hmm.
his work in the paint is really what's impressing me. We all know he's a great shooter. He's a streaky shooter. But his work in the paint and honestly, his shot selection is just getting better. He still takes a couple shots a game where I kind of like, oh, I wish he wouldn't have done that. Maybe a little bit out of control, driving to the
Yeah.
basket. But good luck finding a sophomore guard in America who's not doing things like that.
Hmm.
And if you would have told me that Pop would go 8 of 11 from the field, 5 of 7 from three, 2 of 2 from the free throw line, with 23 points in the second half, he can do whatever he wants. I don't care. He's playing so
Yeah.
well.
He's playing really
Um,
well.
and again, I think I talk about this a lot on our pods, but Tech only took 9 3-point shots in the second half, and a lot of people that may be surprising because it felt like they took a ton. But they took smart shots. I mean, 5 of those 6 came from Pop, which is pretty bizarre. The other came from Kerwin.
Yeah.
But again, the recipe for this team is not to jack up a ton of threes. They took 11 threes in the first half, and look how that turned
Hmm.
out, right? It's
Yeah.
just that's not how I see this team winning. But yeah, let's I guess anything that any other notes in the second half that you wanted to go over? I mean, I really did want to touch on Warren Washington as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's a big one. He's kind of your catalyst down low. Um, and this is nothing really like against Robert Jennings, but there's definitely a definite drop off, which at the beginning of the season would have kind of said something, but to me it's not now because Warren Washington has turned into this. He'll probably if he continues to play this way, he'll probably be the all Big 12 probably second team. I don't know if anybody's beating out Dickinson because he's averaging 20 and can shoot and plays for Kansas, but he'll probably be your all Big 12 second team center, and that's been huge for this team. You haven't had that in a long time. A guy that can just consistently, like Tariq Owens was really consistent on the defensive end, but you didn't know night to night whether you were going to get 12 or 2 from him. In conference play from Warren Washington, you've consistently gotten double digits, and that's a big, big thing. The other guy I kind of wanted to talk about was Chance McMillan quietly scoring 14 points. Like I looked at the box score this morning, and I was like, what? Because he only hit 1 3, and that's usually his thing. Like coming into the season, everybody was like, oh yeah, sniper. But he's getting to the rim. He's doing a lot of really, really good things, without the ball in his hands. And I think having that kind of scoring potential, even with Toussaint kind of being in a slump offensively, is really, really positive.
It is, yeah. And another, I mean, we always touch on Tech's analytics here on this podcast, but Tech was 17 of 18 from the free throw line last night.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I don't think people understand like how good of a free throw shooting team this team
Hmm.
is. I mean, they very well could finish as one of the best free throw shooting teams in Texas Tech history. They
Yes.
may, I think they'll also make a push for one of the best. I don't have the historical stats for Texas Tech pulled up, but they're shooting the three damn well this year as well. Very well this year. So I would say keep an eye on the shooting. I think we went over some of their shooting numbers in the Houston preview, but 3-point shooting, free throw shooting, their effective field goal percentage, it's all so impressive. But yeah,
Yeah.
Warren Washington, man, I mean, he finished with 19 points. He was 1 rebound shy of a double-double. He had 9 rebounds, 1 assist. He did pick up a couple fouls in the second half there, but that Khalifa guy, man, he was feeling it last night, and they were using him
Yeah,
so well. And
they were.
it's like I felt like a lot of his kind of openings in the second half where he got to the rim real easy was because Texas Tech was almost just overcompensating for those 3-point threats that were on the outside. They were over
Yeah.
pursuing a little bit on some of those, and It led to some easy buckets for him, but ultimately, if you're allowing, that guy to be the focal point of the offense and you're locking down their guards, I'm cool with it. I think they held their leading scorer. I believe the leading scorer is Robinson, right? He's kind of the lengthy guard,
Yeah.
and they held
Yeah,
him
he's
to eight points. He was 3 of 12
yeah.
from the field, 2 of 10 from three yesterday.
Yeah, I mean they did a really really good job on him. I think they keyed in on him a little bit. I know he's showing up on a lot of NBA mock drafts in the first round. Like he's a legit prospect. I did feel like they did a good job, especially late in the second half. They were trying to kind of force him the ball, and he made a couple of boneheaded turnovers. I thought that really really played in the Tech's favor. Um, but yeah, I just these shooting numbers are crazy. I mean, when was the last time you've had a Texas Tech team shoot like this, especially from the free throw line? Because like I remember people's gripes and myself included with some of Beard's teams over the years was like, oh wow, we just shot 61% from the free throw line in that game and we lost by two, or like wow, we could have blown this team out if we would have made our free throws. Like you don't see that we're shooting dang near 80%. It's great. It's insane. Like it's really, really positive to see. And I think that's something they may have looked for in the offseason. Like, Warren Washington's probably your worst free throw shooter on the team. And I'm still pretty confident in him stepping up and making a pair. Like he's not a terrible free throw shooter.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, Warren Washington's your worst free throw shooter on the team. And honestly, for a big, he's got a pretty decent free throw stroke. He's not like one of those bigs that needs to shoot it one-handed, or he's got
Yeah.
some crazy free throw mechanic. But everyone else is just solid, man. I mean, Kerwin
Mm-hmm.
Walton, elite shooter, Chance McMillan, elite shooter, Pop has been fantastic from the free throw line. Joe has been fantastic from the free throw line. And those are the
Yeah.
guys who are getting the lion's share of the free throws for Tech. Darian
Mm-hmm.
Williams, even too. He doesn't shoot a lot of free throws per game, but he's very good at shooting free throws as
Yeah,
well.
he is.
But yeah, I mean, to finish the game, I mean, Tech's last 6 points of the game were free throws. And they
Mm-hmm.
made six in a row to finish that game off. Actually, sorry, eight points. The final 8 points of the game for Tech were all from free throws. And they made all of them. They were eight for eight there. And then Pop Isaacs, I just wanted to go over his. I'm looking here at the stat broadcast kind of run tracker, and Pop Isaacs made three 3-point shots in the final 5 minutes and 33 seconds of the game.
Yeah.
Um, so that's and then he made a pair, and then he made sorry, so he made three 3-point shots, and then he made a 2-point basket, and then he had that assist to Warren,
Yeah.
and then he made two free throws. So Pop, what is that? 13 points in the final 5 minutes and 33 seconds. So I don't know how do you stop that? And he's just he's the MVP
Yeah.
of the game yesterday for Texas Tech. I mean,
Oh, by
I
far.
I thought that I thought the Kansas State win was huge, and I was like, how did we win that game? But I don't I this was a whole different thing because
Yeah.
being down 11 points at the half and then being down 16 is a big difference. And it
Mm-hmm.
just felt like it was BYU's night almost, right? It just felt like there was nothing that was going to
Yeah.
stop them.
It was very after I really thought after the first half, I was like, man, I don't know. I don't see a way for us to kind of get out of this. But
And
the last three games, you've been down 16, 11, and 9 at halftime. And you won the two games you were down by the most. Because at Houston, it was a 9 point game at half,
true.
and you just kind of got, credit to Houston, man. They're a top five team. They kind of smothered you, kind of like they do everybody else. But you were able to take advantage in the second half, and the halftime adjustments this year have been just crazy, crazy good.
They have been, yeah. Texas Tech has definitely not been the greatest out of the gate, which is
No,
a little bit concerning. You
yeah,
never want to it. I would put it this way though. I would much rather Texas Tech be a second half team than a first half team.
oh, 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I wonder. It just feels like this team comes out flat from an energy standpoint. So I almost wonder if that's going to be a point of emphasis for McCaslin. But there were some things I noticed on the sideline last night as well. It does seem it feels like, and I can't confirm this or anything, but it feels like Dave Smart is potentially running the rotations, based on
He is.
there were a few times last night where you saw Dave Smart kind of directing guys on and off the bench. And I just want to keep giving him credit because he really deserves it. If he keeps, I don't necessarily know if he's going to be a head coaching candidate this coming cycle, at the end of this
Hmm.
year, but he deserves it, man. He deserves to be in consideration. I think he's like the Canadian version of Ben McCollum, is what we used to say in the offseason.
Yeah.
But probably even more successful, which is hard to imagine. And
Hmm.
very, very well respected. But his adjustments have been elite. Obviously him and McCaslin together seem to be really efficient and effective together as a tandem. I think that's really important too, because it's like, if you're going to have a kind of an associate, because let's face it, Dave Smart is essentially the associate head coach. He doesn't have the
Yeah.
official title. He probably will get the official title at the end of the summer.
Hmm.
But they work really well together. And I think that's really important for a coaching staff. You see it a lot where
Yes.
there's this power dynamic that you have to give as a head coach, where you have to say, hey, I'm going to give my trust to this guy. Even if we win or lose, like, I'm not going to throw him under the bus. Like, that's my guy. You saw a lot of weird stuff last season between Mark Adams and Steve Green. But for
Yeah.
instance, you really did. And it's like you saw a lot of weird concept stuff breaking down, and you didn't really know who was calling the plays at the end of the game. Was it Green? Was it Adams? What was going on? It seems
Was it
like
the
they
other
were,
Adams?
yeah, it's true. That's a whole nother dynamic that we could
Yeah,
talk
that
about.
was say.
But it really is fascinating to watch, and I think it's so pivotal, for our listeners. Like, having that connection with your coaching staff is so important. You have to put trust in. I mean, Mark Adams and Chris Beard were a great example. Those two worked very well together.
Yeah, they did.
Beard trusted Adams with everything. And look what it did for Tech. I mean, they made it to a national championship. They had some of their best teams
Hmm.
in school history, and just ultimately were very good teams. So that's very promising for Tech. We both thought that the Dave Smart hire was going to be very good just from what we had
Oh
read.
yeah.
But I don't think we realized like how good necessarily it was. He and Grant McCaslin deserve a large, large chunk of the credit, as well as a lot of the players on this team too, man. I mean, it's the coaching is great. But the guys on the floor, they're the ones actually going out there executing. And Texas Tech seems like they hit the home run within the transfer portal. Warren Washington, especially.
Oh yeah.
You and I tracked that recruitment very closely. He
Hmm.
chose Texas Tech over TCU. TCU wanted him bad, very
They
bad, and
did.
they need a guy like him pretty bad.
They did.
So Grant McCaslin and these guys, they beat some people out, some good teams out that were in the postseason last year, and
Hmm.
it's been awesome to watch. But let's pivot really quick, Jacob. I want to go over resume, because we're kind of getting into the middle of conference play almost, where maybe not necessarily, we're not quite there yet, but we're getting into the territory where we're starting to talk about resume, who's getting into the tournament, seeding and stuff like that. So you go over your thoughts with me now on kind of where you see Tech fitting in. Are we on the bubble? Are we ahead of the bubble? Where is Tech out right now, in your opinion?
I think we have. I think obviously last night's win is going to look really good. Um, I feel like the more we get into the season, I feel like the better the K State win's going to look. Like, talk about a team that has bounced back after winning a heartbreaker. Like, they went and beat Baylor, and then yeah, kind of outlasted in their win over Oklahoma State
Yeah.
last night. But they're a team that is gonna, that one's gonna look good. I feel like right now we're kind of on top of the bubble. We're still in the bubble, but we're on top of it. Um, and I feel like the more the season goes along, I feel like the higher we're gonna get. I really project a 6 or 7 seed when it all comes down to it, maybe even higher. Like, if you can get a bounce back win against Houston at home, or if you can go beat a Kansas, I feel like it's going to be you could have a chance to get some resume building wins. But I feel like at the end of the day, we're gonna look at a 6-7 seed. You're probably going to finish in the top 4 of the conference, and that's probably about right.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think right now, Bart Torvik has Texas Tech projected to be a 7 seed.
Hmm.
So that I think that from everything I've seen, I think that the kind of the ceiling here, is about a 6 seed for Tech. I think
Yeah.
that could be doable. I mean, if you go on the road and steal one of these wins from Oklahoma or TCU, you are absolutely in the 6 seed conversation. I mean that
Yeah.
then, but we'll see what happens there. But I think I do follow a lot of these bracketologists and these guys that do this for a living, and it does seem like Texas Tech has established themselves above the bubble, like you said. I don't
Hmm.
think getting that win last night though was just oof. You just don't want to say it's a must win, but man, I really felt like this was a must win because if
You feel a whole lot better
you really
about
do.
it.
Because put it this way, Tech wins. They moved to 2-3 in Q1. They're undefeated Q2 through Q4.
Hmm.
So if Tech loses that game, they move to 1-3 in Q1, which is just it's not ideal, especially when you're about to go on the road to play two, top 25-ish teams.
Yeah.
So it's like it's just not what you want to do. And I think that the biggest key too to keep in mind is BYU is like the analytical darling of the entire Big 12, like I
Yes,
said
they
earlier.
are.
So
Hmm.
according to all of the analytics sites, BYU is the best team in the Big 12 from an analytic standpoint.
Hmm.
From the
Besides Houston.
besides Houston, yeah, that's true. Yeah, sorry, Houston is number one
I
in almost all of
I
them,
feel like
but
they're the most underrated if you look at it analytically, because they're gonna probably end up in the 20s this week in the rankings, but they're all like across the board analytically, they're top 10, top 11,
yep,
like
exactly, which
very
is huge.
underrated.
The
Hmm.
all of these things, whenever these brackets and the resumes are kind of being reviewed, all of these things are taken into consideration. Wow, like whenever they're looking at this one, yes, it was a home game, it was a home win, but they still did beat an analytical, top 10 team. And don't get it twisted. BYU is going to be very good this year. I think didn't they smoked Iowa State at home, right?
Yes.
They smoked Iowa
Yes, they
State at
did.
home, and I believe they had a starter out, and then a key. They had Traore was out as well, so
Yeah.
they smoked an Iowa State team who's like super hot right now, and
Hmm.
without two of their core players. So that's a damn good team. You saw it last night. They're so deep, and they have so many different guys that can gash you from outside, and then they stretch the floor with their bigs. That Khalifa guy, I mean, that's a big development for them if he can keep playing like that.
Oh yeah,
Good luck.
100%.
And I think it, oh, my little light just fell. I think it was a good kind of test for Texas Tech because they have yet to play a team that really has a big who's can spread the floor, who's versatile like
Oh
that.
yeah. Hmm.
And that was, I feel like just for Tech to be able to get a look at that, that was important for them. I do believe Oklahoma has a big, is it Henson or what? Who's the guy that they got from West Virginia, Oklahoma? The big man. He was let me
Oh,
look it up really
no,
quick.
he's from Pitt, John Hughley.
From Pitt. I'm sorry.
Yeah, John Hughley.
John
Yeah,
Hughley.
he's
He can
good.
he can stretch the floor too.
He can stretch it. Yeah.
He can stretch the floor, and he's a big body. I mean, he's probably a
Yeah,
bigger body than Khalifa, and he's probably a little bit more athletic and a little bit stronger.
definitely.
I
Yeah, I
don't
would
think
agree with that.
Khalifa is the strongest guy in the world. Khalifa's got a funny body, right? He's kind of got the dad bod, right?
Hmm.
But man,
Yeah.
he's like the guy at the rec who's just like tearing everyone up and knocking down threes and just dunking on everyone.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of seeding, though, I think that you hit the nail on the head. I think Texas Tech has established themselves above the bubble right now. Tech should be ranked in the top 20 this week, if I had to guess. Losing at Houston is not a bad loss. It's the best loss in
Yeah.
college basketball right now. They
Hmm.
held UCF or UCF to under 40 points, I think. So they
I
are
think it was right at 40.
yeah,
No, it was 42. It was 42, but they
42.
held them to
So
15% shooting. Like that's
yeah,
crazy.
they knocked down a couple shots in garbage time, but I think they had like
Hmm.
36 points with 2 minutes to play or something. So
That's insane.
I mean, being at that game in person, it was pretty nuts to watch, but their defense is just it's a whole nother level. I don't know if they can continue that defensive play on the road in the Big 12. I'm really curious to
Hmm.
see about that. I
Me
would
too.
love to see Texas Tech and Houston get another run, in Lubbock. That's obviously not going to happen, I don't think, this year. But anyways, good stuff for Texas Tech. That was a must win. In my opinion, you moved to 2-3 in Q1. You're still undefeated in those Q2 through Q4 games, which is really important. And best of yet, you've almost matched your conference win total from last year, and we're only a couple games in. So
Well, come on
it
now. That wasn't very hard to do.
it wasn't. No, it wasn't. And there's a lot of people out there that on Twitter that are still defending Mark Adams and those guys to this day. But man, Grant McCasland, home run hire,
Mhm.
Pop Isaacs, baller, Warren Washington, baller. A lot to look forward to with Texas Tech. Now they're going to go on the road to Oklahoma, I believe.
Yep,
Let
on
me
Saturday.
Saturday. So they get a week
Yeah.
off. Okay.
Yeah, they get the midweek, they get a midweek bye this week. They're gonna go on the road to Oklahoma and then turn right back around and head to Fort Worth. So
Yep,
definitely I think this break kind of comes at the right time. You're
it
kind of
does.
splitting your four hardest games in half with a solid break. So I think it's a very, very solid opportunity to go get one on the road.
Yep. And you and I sat down earlier in the week and we said, well, if Texas Tech can go 2-2, that's a gigantic win. And they've essentially
Hmm.
set themselves up to make a run at the Big 12
Yeah,
championship. And now we're 1-1. So we need one more of these road wins. I think TCU may be the easier team to get it against, but who knows? Oklahoma is susceptible. So we'll keep an eye on that. Jacob and I will do a mailbag this week as well. And we will preview the Oklahoma game. But don't forget to
absolutely.
subscribe, guys. It really helps us out. We're trying to grow the channel. Hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, definitely hit the like button. But Jacob, man, thanks a lot. And we'll talk to you guys later.
Yes, sir.